Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and I'm back with another DIY. One of the questions I get asked probably the most often is where can I get typewriter ribbon? And I have a whole Typewriter 101 series, including a Typewriter 101 ribbon video, which I'll link down below, which can tell you where to get modern remakes of typewriter ribbons. Yes, they're still making typewriter ribbons, but what's really cool about the modern typewriter ribbon market is you can get them in all kinds of different colors, varieties, and materials. Now, I really like playing with different colors of typewriter ribbon. I like to match them to the machine. I think it's really fun. I've put a full green ribbon on a green typewriter, and I just thought that was the most clever thing I could ever think of. But one thing I've never tried to do myself is actually re-ink a typewriter ribbon, and it's something I get asked often about. And I've also been kind of interested in making my own custom ribbons. So I thought today we would try DIYing our own rainbow ribbon. Now, a few years ago, I was on Etsy looking at typewriter ribbons, and I ran into this company or this seller that was making custom rainbow typewriter ribbons. And I thought they were the most amazing thing I had ever seen. I didn't buy one then because it was a little too expensive for me, but I always liked that concept of being able to type the entire rainbow. I then more recently ran into this blog article on a blog called Claire Le Secrétaire, I think it's French, on a post of how to make your own custom rainbow ribbon. Now, this post is from 2014, but I decided to follow it and make my own rainbow ribbon. Now, if you look through this post, and I've linked it down below, they do list some of the materials, including a ribbon that you can get, typewriter spools, ink pads to help ink up the typewriter ribbon. They also suggest silicone spray and rubber gloves. I didn't use silicone spray, but I did get some ink pads, and I found an uninked ribbon on eBay, which I'll link down below. So this is a standard typewriter ribbon just without any ink, so you could make it custom yourself. So with my uninked ribbon and my kids' ink pads that are water-based, because if I get this on the floor, I want to be able to clean it, it was time to put on some gloves and start this DIY. So the process here is pretty simple, but it took me a while to figure out how best to approach this. I would unwind the ribbon, and then I would try to figure out the best color pattern using the inks I got in this set. Now, there was a mix of light colors and dark colors. There were some more neon colors. I wanted to go full rainbow, so I went with the brighter colors in this set, and I put them in an order that I thought looked kind of aesthetically pleasing. And then I would take that unwound ribbon and start to dip it into the ink pads, pressing it down into the pad itself and trying to soak up as much ink as I could into a couple inches of the ribbon. Now, I did this on both sides of the ribbon so I could use either side when I rewrapped it, and I wanted to make sure it was thoroughly soaked. It took me a while to figure out the best method for this because pressing it in with my fingers would get ink all over the glove, and then I couldn't put that into the next ink pad because we'd have color transfer. It was a little messy. Eventually, I developed a pattern of holding the ribbon in one hand and then pushing my finger into the ink pad with the ribbon in between and pulling it through. I found that was the most effective way to kind of soak up all this ink into the ribbon itself, but I went through each of the colors and put a rainbow on this ribbon. Now, I did a couple inches of each color, and I had some trouble with color bleeding and color transfer between getting ink on my gloves and the next section of the ribbon, and every time you go between one color and the next color, you're gonna have at least an inch there of colors that mix. I saw this specifically with the yellow and blue. There's an inch of green between yellow and blue. But once I had the whole ribbon done, I let it sit. Now, the article suggests that you should let this sit for a while until it's fully dry so you can avoid getting color transfer once you put it on spools, and so that when you type, the letters are pretty clear. I let it sit overnight, and I probably could have let it sit a little bit longer because when I did the next thing, which was wrap it onto the spools, I did get some color transfer. Now, I always suggest that you keep the original spools with the machine that you have, just so that you know they're always going to fit into your typewriter. But I took the spools off my Smith Corona Silent, which is a new typewriter in my collection, and I wrapped around this new rainbow ribbon. Once I wrapped these spools, I set the ribbon into the machine, and I did a little type test. Now, I have to apologize to who got this letter because some of it is illegible. Some of the ink colors did better than others in kind of transferring onto the paper and also being legible against a white background. I went with brighter colors because I wanted it to really look like a rainbow, and as you were reading, I wanted it to change colors. But there is a disadvantage to using some of these brighter colors. Specifically, the yellow and the pink that I used were almost neon, but against white paper, they are impossible to read. So eventually, as I was writing this letter, I started to skip over the yellow. I would just roll the ribbon further ahead to skip over the entire yellow section because it's just impossible to read. It looks great, but not on paper. Overall, I thought this was a really fun process. A little bit messy, like thank goodness they were washable inks, but a really interesting way to try something new on a typewriter. If you don't use your typewriter often, there are a few ways which you can make using it a little bit more exciting. Trying new stationery, different paper types, and trying new ribbons can be a way to make a typewriter just more exciting to use if you haven't used it in a while. And this process was a fun way to make my own custom ribbon. And now I can make more because I have like 12 ink pads. I highly recommend that you test the colors a little bit before you start inking a full ribbon in them. Light colors didn't seem to do as well, but darker colors like the purple, the blue, and I thought the orange looked really good as well, seemed to work really well for this project. I've linked down below all my resources, including the article that I used, the ribbon that I bought, the ink pads that I used, and my Typewriter 101 ribbon video in case you're interested in learning more about typewriter ribbons. If you're interested in more typewriter content, I do have some other videos on this YouTube channel, as well as on Instagram at just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching and remind you, you're just my typewriter.